Julie, how are you today? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure as always. So you've got a piece of Acculturated right now on Anthropologie, the store, not the science, and how Anthropologie is now selling the sort of hipster trash cans, right? Are these how much were they going for? Like $100?
$143, marked down to $99. So get it now. Get it now.
Whoa.
Yeah. So these are these hipster trash cans. The Sesame. Who's the Sesame? What is wrong with me? The Sesame Street character.
Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch, right. So it's sort of an Oscar the Grouch trash can, It's got distressed sides, and it's a little bit rusted, and they have the wood handles. So it's supposed to look like, you just got it on some Bronx street corner. So it's very hipster, very cool trash can for $143. Yeah. And so
wow, 148 actually. And so you say that there's this article at The Atlantic. Megan Garber says that this is problematic, right? Because everything is problematic. That
right.
Now mall shoppers, a symbol of a troubling trend when rich people, mall shoppers, quote, co-opt the objects of poverty and turn it into design. But you say she's really off here. What she's really ticked off about is the fact that what more Americans can now live and act like rich people used to be able to do.
Right. So Anthropologie, and Megan talks about this, that Anthropologie's sort of aesthetic, their store's aesthetic, is supposed to be Paris artist loft. I mean, spare me for a moment. I know it's kind of annoying. Okay. Right? But that's sort of the look they're going for, okay? And so what annoys this writer is not that the rich have co-opted items that used to be things that only poor people had. She says that, it's the idea that mall shoppers, she actually calls them mall shoppers, can now look like they can have the decorations in their home that used to be reserved for people who could only go to Paris and scour, the thrift stores and look for this discarded artist who lives in a loft garbage can. Now anybody can have that. And so I write about how the real outrage is sort of how ubiquitous these items are becoming. Items that used to only be for the elite, and that really bothers people. They think that, these things should really just be the province of people who can afford to fly to Paris, who don't need the time off of work, and aren't horrified by $1,000 airfares. And then I talked about how this is also rampant in the food world, that food writers do the same thing. And I don't know if you want to go into the second part of my article, but I do find that.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, that food writers do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the term farm to table, right? Which is something that when there were only a few restaurants around, right, and you had to go to Berkeley and you had to dine there, and maybe you'd go into Sonoma Valley and you knew a great little place. But now that the farm to table movement is actually a movement, and you can find farm to table
Ruby
not
Tuesdays.
too far away from Farmville in a little town called okay, so there you go. Silver Diner is a big farm to table thing, right? So chains now are adapting. They're trying to get locally sourced vegetables and meat. And you would think, again, that this would be something that the food writers would be celebrating.
Yeah.
Instead, they're pissed off because like someone stole their baby, right?
Right. So I cite another article.
And they made it available to the masses.
Right. And that's the sickening part, right? That's the thing they can't stand. I mean, these food writers, some of the food writers for The Atlantic, the New York Times, Salon, they have been beating up on the sort of the fast food and quick service restaurants in America for decades. They've been saying, that food, that fast food, that quick service food, and chain restaurants, right? And they've been saying, just terrible. They get their supplies off of big trucks. And so they've been critical of this and have been saying, we need to switch to a farm to table sort of system. And when those same restaurants do that, so now you can go into a Ruby Tuesdays or a Silver Diner or one of these chain restaurants, sit-down restaurants, and some fast food restaurants and quick service food. Panera does this. now they're outraged that it's not authentic farm to table and that they're bastardizing the term. And so, you just can't win with these people. They have been demanding this for years. They finally get their way, and then they're annoyed that somehow these restaurants have co-opted the term, which, they are trying. Silver Diner is trying to integrate local supplies and local ingredients. And so it's frustrating to me. It's just the typical elitist. You can't please these people, first of all. They are never happy. They'll find something to be angsty about no matter what. But again, you give them their way. And then they're irritated that, Corey Kumar in his piece, he talked about, how the restaurants in Akron have this farm to table theme, and so what they're really annoyed at is Akron people are doing this, and just the middle class people who really don't understand the term. So I just find this kind of elitism a little bit insulting and annoying, and so I had a little fun with that column.
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous. First of all, there's plenty of farmland around Akron. You get outside of the city limits, and it's there are a lot of rural parts to Ohio. I've been there, so you're right. This is. And it's sad because, as you say, they're getting their way. They're getting what they asked for. But as it turns out, they weren't really asking for this. What they really like is telling other people how to live.
Yep.
And so if somebody had come to, what was this guy's name? Colby?
Corey Kumar.
First name?
Yeah.
Corby.
Yeah.
Corby.
Yeah.
If somebody had gone to Corby and said, listen, Corby, we're going to put you in charge of, making farm-to-table restaurants a thing in the United States, he would not have said, okay, I'm going to go to Ruby Tuesday and, Silver Diner and these places. He would have tried to shut those places down because he doesn't like chains, I imagine, right?
Right.
And so it's they're not getting their way. This isn't the world that they envisioned. Oddly enough, other people are also, influencing decision making here. And, chain restaurants are their own evil or their own benefit, whatever you think. But they can't get beyond, I think, again, the fact that this is playing out in ways that they didn't envision because they see so much wrong with the corporatizing of our food as well. And so they can't separate. They can't differentiate between the two problems. It's kind of, it's ridiculous to me because, as you say.
Well, some parts of his article were good. This Corby Kumar's article, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly, but parts of his article were good. And I pointed out a point in his article where he kind of made fun of these long form, you go to some of these really fancy, expensive restaurants, and in a normal restaurant it would be roast chicken, right? In one of these fancy restaurants, they would say where the chicken lived, where it died, how it was slaughtered, what it ate, who his friends were. It was like Portlandia. Portlandia has actually done a sketch on this. The couple goes to the restaurant and they have a slate of 50 questions before they can order off the menu to make sure everything is fine. But so he does make fun of that, and that's good. And I think the food industry and sort of the foodie world, I should say, deserves to be made fun of. And to some degree, I don't identify with that world anymore. I used to consider myself this big foodie, and I still do care an awful lot about food. I write about food. I sort of watch the movement, but I find the movement to be really hard to deal with. I find the lectures from people like Mark Bittman at the New York Times and Michael Pollan and many of the other sort of food elites out there I find them to be completely out of touch. Michael Pollan is a well-known food elitist. He recently had a documentary on PBS. I have not had a chance to write on it because that would require me to watch the show, and I really don't want to. But I did catch a little bit. And Michael Pollan is sort of well known for sort of this rule, these rules that he has about eating, and some of it's good advice. Eat food, mostly plants, or eat food, not a lot, mostly plants. I don't totally disagree with that advice. But one of his other bits of advice is he tells people just shop in the perimeter of the store. Okay, and that's where the fresh dairy, the fresh vegetables, the fresh meat, all the fresh things are, and frankly, the more expensive things. and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but in general, he talks about this. There is a whole universe of things in the middle of the store known as canned food and frozen food. Now, these are things that elites don't like to talk about, and that's not really very fancy food, so they don't really promote it. But this is. It's some frozen and some canned food is actually more nutritious than fresh. It's much cheaper. It has a shelf life it's very convenient for people to keep canned goods in their pantry rather than constantly having to go to the store. And again, it's cheaper. So, these things kind of frustrate me with the food elite out there and these food writers.
I can tell.
that that just seem out of touch with how normal people live. I'm done.
No, I think, listen, you were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt you. This was fantastic. Clearly, this is something that gets to you. But you said something way back a couple minutes ago, and it struck me that, when you said you don't feel a part of the foodie movement anymore, and then you started talking about Michael Pollan's rules, and it strikes me that, there are people who for whom this is primarily an excuse, again, to tell other people what to do, right? How to eat. It's not so much that it's that Michael Pollan is part of the foodie movement. He's part of the diet movement. He's part of the telling you how to eat movement.
Yeah.
Whereas, the food movement to me is about the meal.
Yeah.
Right? It's about what you're actually putting in your mouth. It's about enjoying that food and that experience with friends and family. That's the foodie culture to me. What they're doing is not a part of the foodie culture. So I would say that if they've co-opted that term, then that's what's happened. But I think that, telling people how to eat and actually writing and talking and demonstrating how to cook and how to, and what you're eating and the experience of the meal, I think those are two very, very different things.
But they're not in reality. The truth is there's been a lot of cross-pollination between cooks and policy people. We've seen it at the White House. Sam Cass was the personal chef of the Obamas when they lived in Chicago, and he followed them as the personal chef in the White House and then became the head food policy guy. You've got Mark Bittman, who writes cookbooks, but then goes off on policy issues in the New York Times. So I agree with you that, yes, these are two different worlds, but but a lot of these people who are cooks and might not really have a handle on how the real world works or how real people live, then spout off on policy, and I think it really confuses people.
Well, I'm glad that you are here to help educate us. Again, I thought this was a fantastic piece. It's at Acculturated, Anthropologie with the IE. Anyway, go check out Julie's piece. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the program, and I hope we get a chance to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me, for putting up with my run-on sentences.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, I think that I will actually be in studio at the Mothership next week. So, yay.
Okay, good.
All right, we'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.
All right. Julie Gunlock, check her stuff out at the Independent Women's Forum, but again, this latest piece at acculturated.com.